episode 202 of Above Ground Podcast, Through the Lens of a Spouse.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Will Foley and TPP, are not medical professionals, and this is not medical advice. Both Will and TPP have first-hand experience with mental illness. They have their own perspective and own thoughts on mental health challenges. These conversations aim to break down the walls while building stronger foundations for positive mental health. Above Ground Podcast was birthed to help those who struggle with their mental health through honest dialogue. By speaking openly and sharing tools, they foster connection. By fostering connection, they convey hope. With connection and hope, we can continue to increase awareness. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Coming at you live with real conversations about mental health from the peer perspective, it's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now your hosts, TPP and Will Foley.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below.
That's right. What's up, TPP? Good Sunday morning to you, my friend.
How are you, friend?
I'm all right, buddy. I'm all right. Good morning, everyone. We are on Zoom again and with someone that is local, right? You're from the 518.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right.
Born and raised.
There we go. See, another proud Nippertowner. Here we go, man. Timmy, take it over, buddy.
Well, we're here with Dave and Rita McCormick. I met them both, I believe, at the Rita Walk.
Yes.
Out of the Darkness Walk in Saratoga.
2 years ago, I believe. Now.
Yeah.
And thank you for being there.
Oh, amen. It's an amazing gathering, man. It really
yeah. That was my fourth this year. This year was my fourth, I think.
Yeah, I think we've been to at least 3, if not 4. But it's quite the wow. I don't know. I walk through those quilts and I look at them, man, and I'm like, wow. The stories just they nail you, man. They nail your heart, you know, and they make you want to reach out and help, you know.
Exactly, and that's kind of where we come from. This, you know, we're not like looking to, you know, dig information out on you, but we're looking to share stories of real people, you know, because in reality, it can be somebody else's survival kit. You know, you're like a hand for somebody that, you know, yes. that needs it, and you have a different story to tell, because we usually talk with either, you know, someone dealing with mental health challenges or hurdles, and you are kind of coming at it through the lens of a spouse, as your book says.
The books, and actually I did publish the second one last year too, which kind of takes us through what I call the other side of the valley. Rita had a really, really dark 5-year period. It was a struggle. We'll talk a little bit more about that, you know, as we go on. But yeah, there's 2 sides to the story here, you know. And I've been someone that's struggled myself with anxiety, some dark depression about 15 years ago or so that I survived. And I have a couple friends in the past that didn't survive the darkness, you know, and they're not above ground any longer, you know, and that kind of, it hits home, you know, when you know folks that have dealt with this illness. It's definitely a challenge.
It sure does. Yep. As we know.
Amen.
So what kind of, as far as the book goes, did you set out intentionally to write a book, or how did that come about?
No, it's actually a pretty funny story. So as you know, and I spoke with you a little bit, we're deeply rooted in the local church here in our neighborhood. We met in a local church. We met in a Bible study. We got married in a local church. Rita told me very early on that, well, first of all, she tried to avoid me, but that's another story for another time. She wasn't about to trust men. She had been through a really ugly divorce. I had been through a divorce, and the two of us just, we connected in the local church. So that's a really big part of our story. So I would say it's probably about 6 to 7 years ago, we had actually left our local church here and went up to Northway to one up in Saratoga, because we had felt that God had called us there to help serve. And really what we worked on in ministry since we were married is really helping the poor, the widow, the poor, the widow, the orphan. Sorry about that, guys. Phone's beeping. So our hearts were really to serve those that are downcast. You know, what I didn't know at the time was what I believe God was calling to both of us, to the downcast spiritually, emotionally, mentally, the ones that really don't feel like they belong, and within the walls of the local church. So about 6 years ago, I was praying one day and talking with one of our pastors at the time, and just felt this inner voice telling me, the Spirit of God saying, you need to write your story. At that point in time, Rita's health had really blown up, that 5-year battle. And I said, okay, all right, God, you know what, I'll do this, but you do understand that I barely passed English in high school, right? And I said, okay, so I wrote 3 or 4 pages, and I had them in a file, and I said, I set them aside, and the file got corrupt somehow. I lost the file. So I went to God and said, hey, you know what? I told you so. I'm not a writer. I'm not an author. Fast forward 4 years later, and the COVID-19 pandemic blew up. And at that point in time, Rita she was very much on the end of that, what I call the 5-year battle, what I write about in the book. And she was on the very end of that, where we just tried tweaking meds and, constantly, and figuring out what in the world was going on. The world was blowing up, right? Anxiety was like through the roof, and it still is, right? It just, the good thing about COVID-19 pandemic is that we brought it to the spotlight, mental health illness, much more than we have in the past, So in that process, Rita was suffering, the world was suffering, and God said, it's time. So I said, okay. And I set out to write something. Like I said, I'm not an author. I wasn't an author. I am now, I guess, but got hooked up with some great people that are lead authors. And, now we're twice over published, and it's our story. It's her story. The first book in particular is her story through my eyes, and the second book is really more about both of us, and kind of a look through the COVID-19 experience, the pandemic experience, and what's happened in the world. So it's a little bit deeper. It's probably a little bit more written, because the first one's really raw with a lot of dark humor and sarcasm, So yeah, that's where we got to with the books. And now our hope is I've got another 5 years or so before I retire. So what our plans and our hopes are is to travel specifically to the local churches. Now, ironically, I work in the retail supermarket business. So I've done this for 40 years, and I am in one of the higher management positions within the stores. So I have a lot of young kids that I actually speak with. I don't like to use the word counsel, because I'm not a counselor, I'm not a doctor, but the books have opened up, an unbelievable amount of opportunity to speak with these kids that are suffering, and it's really pretty bad out there right now.
I wanted to ask you about, so I understand that the church is very important to you, and were you involved in the church as a youth also, or was this something that you came to through your own dark experiences?
We both grew up in the Catholic Church. And
as did I, yeah. As
we
most of us, as so many of us did.
Yeah, especially in the Northeast here. This is
absolutely
Catholic area. So we grew up in it, and I was 17 or 18. A friend of mine who had some really deep mental health issues and problems, and the 70s was all about drugs, sex, rock and roll, and that was my lifestyle back then. We joke often that we never would have hooked up as husband and wife back then. She's shaking her head. So my buddy just, he was going to the Catholic Church, and he was like really, he was a mess. It's pretty sad. He was a mess, and I didn't completely understand. I thought it was just the drugs and stuff, but it really was mental health. But he kept telling me about this little nun in the back chapel of the local Catholic Church that would have prayer meetings and talk about being born again. Now, I don't want to get too deep and spend all the time on that, but he brought me there, and basically, being born again, yeah, it happened in the Catholic Church, but being born again basically is just, I surrendered my life to Christ, because I already knew I was a mess at that point in time, right? So with the hope of, kind of straightening out, being, doing life right, getting away from drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. But it would take me the next 20 years to get there, So, and I stayed in the church for a long time, but I also started reading, reading the Bible and really digging in and studying. And what I found out over a period of time is that what I was learning didn't line up with all the rules and the regulations of the church. There was a lot of man-made rules. And so I found a church that, was a evangelical church, basically Baptist church, not the legalistic Baptist church. You can't dance, can't sing, not that type of Baptist church. One that understands that we're people, right? We're humans. We needed somebody to save us, man, because we are a wreck, So that's just as my divorce was being finalized. I hooked up with this church, just got grounded with the pastors there, great guys, got connected, ended up meeting Rita there 2 years later. And we just, after 6 months of her hiding from me, she finally gave in, so, and that's, it's a different experience. It's not, I didn't have a Saul or Paul conversion, walking on the road to Damascus and all of a sudden my life changed. No, my life changed through a series of events over a long period of time, And now as I'm older and I look back, I would have done things differently, but we're where we are because of who we are, right? No matter what kind of mistakes we made. And that goes with the whole world too, not just with the Christian community or whatever, whatever God you choose to serve, and Rita and I are not about forcing our beliefs out upon anybody. That's not our job. The Bible doesn't tell us it's my job to go do that. It's the Holy Spirit of God, and we will never force, but we will embrace and encourage and support whoever you are and whatever your circumstances are. And that's really where my job has really, I've done more of that outside of the church than I have inside of the church at this point. But we do hope to take it, retire and take it on the road. And we're actually in the process. It's going to take us another 4 or 5 years to wrap everything up. We're in the process of building a website and a ministry called Silently Suffering Ministries, because the stigma is just as bad within the walls of the church, if not worse at times, and the judgment and the stares. And it took us the better part of 13 years to really talk about her depression in the church.
Actually, that's kind of where I wanted to steer this, because obviously your book is through the lens of a spouse. So I kind of wanted to actually ask, how does that conversation happen in a relationship that's fresh and new? How do you start having that conversation about someone who has a mental health struggle, an issue or hurdle? Because obviously Rita had issues, you had issues.
Yep.
And it's like, how do you start that conversation? Does that conversation start because someone has a meltdown or loses it, for better lack of terms, because you don't have the communication set up yet? Or how does that work, Rita? Is that something that you would like to talk about, or would you rather have Dave talk about?
I'll say something. Basically, I've had clinical depression since my 20s. So it's been my life. And when Dave and I met, we were older, second marriages, because my first one, I'm actually a domestic violence survivor. This one, I wanted to be sure. That's why I ran away from him.
I don't blame her.
But anyways,
I can't say being protective of yourself is not to be expected after that.
Amen.
We knew what to expect in a marriage or what not to expect. We wanted to make sure that we were taking the right steps to it. And I had a lot of baggage, and he knew before we were dating that, because I was out of church for like 3 weeks. And
She vanished one day.
he didn't know what happened. And he became friends with my best friend. and she just told her that I was sick. Well, I actually was in the hospital.
She was doing a stint at Four Winds at the time.
So I came back, and that's when he started making moves. And we never talked about it though, until we started getting more serious. And then, I said, I think we need to have a talk about, what's going on with my health. And so I basically opened up about the mental health, told them I had been in the hospital several times, and, they tweaked my meds and, all that, but that it's not all at the bottom of the valley. I'm at the top of the mountain a lot of times too, doing, acting normal, being normal, just like everybody else.
What is normal? I mean, really, I live with depression and have for many, many years, and the clinical part of it for probably the last 20 or so myself. So it's a shirt I'm very comfortable in myself.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said normal.
But that is what the world looks at, right? It is. They're not normal. Yeah, we're not.
I'm just like the person sitting next to me. I just have challenges that I deal with on a daily basis. I never went into my first marriage with the domestic violence until much later. He said, when I told him about the depression, he said, what did you say?
Basically, well, that's all right. We'll work through it. I'm a mess too. I got my own baggage. That it was that type of an answer that I gave her. And the thing was, is I had no idea what we were getting into together as a married couple. No clue at all. My depression, my anxiety was so much milder, however you want to say it, than what this poor woman is going through, so there's a lot of learning along the way for both of us in that process, and I think that's part of what you guys kind of wanted to hit on here today, doing life together when you have these ups and downs. And Rita's not bipolar, but the ups and downs, unfortunately, we went through a really, really long period of time. And I think that was the turning point, wouldn't you say, babe?
Mm-hmm.
We got to a point where we finally said, hey, you know what, we can't talk about this in the local church, right? We can't, because the stigma, because of the shame. And our pastors knew, but poor Rita, I'll never forget her reaction that day when I did say, it's okay, we'll work through it. She, I think she thought I was crazy too, and I am, not that I like the word crazy either, but come on, let's be real here today, right? So I do remember giving her a Christmas ornament the first year we were dating or married, and it was this. She likes to bake, and she's got nuts. She puts nuts in everything. I'm not a big nut person. Well, I gave her this little Christmas ornament of a squirrel collecting nuts, and it was baked. It says something like, "I'm nuts about you." I'm like, that probably wasn't the best thing for me to do at the time, because at that point in time, I really still didn't have the idea of how deep and dark her journey was, but it's okay, because that sense of humor is gotten us through a lot of stuff, real life.
That's awesome. It sounds like, I was just going to say, it sounds like, a sense of humor, a willingness. I'm hearing like a combination of like hope, connection, and courage is like a common theme that is happening. And I commend you both, but Dave, like, I feel like you have this, I don't even know the word, like this huge well of empathy and understanding for people. And I think that having that understanding is huge, when you're dealing with this situation. I think any interpersonal relationship is going to be difficult, but, to just kind of go, yeah, we're going to get through it. I mean, I'm sure that lifted a weight off of Rita's shoulders, in a way.
Yeah, I think that's like when she first actually started to like me a little bit, Before that, it was just about maybe having a cup of coffee or something,
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little.
Do you think, because you had just talked about, some dark periods and the 5-year thing, do you think making it through those difficult times, did that better the relationship?
I think so. I think that the relationship, we're not perfect, okay? Neither one of us. We don't, especially me, okay? I still have, I had some issues, right? I get frustrated, I get angry, I get, I'm human. We were very specific when we knew what direction we wanted our marriage to go in, because we had both been through burning wrecks. Okay. And so we knew that we wanted it to be grounded in the local church, right? We wanted to connect in that fashion, when we first met, without, and this is going to sound really old fashioned, but we had no sex ahead of time, right? We were not intimate ahead of time. What we both learned and knew, right? And this is hard. This is a hard thing for the world, and it doesn't matter what you believe, but we believed that it was better for us to get to know each other, right? Without that intimacy, right? We believe that, and still believe that joining together is for marriage. That's what we believe, not judging anybody. That's us, right? But for us, that was a huge benefit, I think, for us learning over the first year who we really were with each other, without those expectations of, am I good in bed? Am I, you know what I'm saying? How was that? How was it? No, we got to learn who we were, right? And through that process, that built a relationship that was strong, and as one obstacle after another came upon us in that 5-year period, the 5-year battle I talk about, Rita had to go to the hospital 3 times, right? 4 wins, 3 times, as they continued to try to tweak and fix her meds and stuff. Her father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, then he suddenly died. Her mother, once the father died, her mother just went off the rails with dementia, right? And so then Rita had nearly had a nervous breakdown, and I struggled to understand why she needed a hospital, because I thought I was her savior, but I'm not. She needed the right people around, and she knows, and then my brother, the first hospital stint, my brother died from leukemia, so we had a whole bunch of things happen to us at one period of time that just blew up the depression. And that's what we walked through together. And then I was diagnosed another year later or so with cancer, which we had to overcome that too. I had prostate cancer, and now we're 6 years or 7 years cancer free, I believe. So that was just one more thing in that 5-year period that just, those beginning days and what we planted, and how we intermingled together and where our hope was, is how we've managed to get through. This is the stuff that destroys marriages, families, friends, right? You guys know.
Well, yeah. And I kind of want to, because you're leading to an interesting point, because you actually, by what you described, and I actually want to get Rita's opinion on this, because I'm interested in this, is that you described what a lot of couples would die for, to have that kind of intimacy, because that is a true intimacy builder, how you came to your whole thing. Yep. Rita, what is your take on, and how are you doing? How is this relationship, and how are you feeling now compared to your past relationship, and having been through all the things that you've been through?
What do I think about the way we did it?
Yeah. How, what is your view of your relationship and how it was built through your eyes? Because you came from a really dark experience the first time. Right. Yes.
I was very cautious. I basically probably was the one that held back the most, because again, I didn't know who he was. When I first met him, I ran to the head pastor, because I was like, who is this guy? And of course, he assured me that I was okay. We just did things very slowly. Cup of coffee. We went to a park, sat on a bench. I mean, we just learned about each other. We didn't talk a lot about our pasts, because we didn't want to dwell on that. We wanted to dwell on the future.
How many years have you been married now?
15.
Wow. What is one of the biggest things that you guys have learned coming through this journey about mental illness and how it affects the dynamic of your relationship?
You have to communicate. Like when I'm having a bad day, I have to like let him in on it, because I actually have a chart on my bedroom wall that has to do with depression and how it works up to feeling when you are suicidal, or to go to the hospital. And they're little triggers, and we talk about them, and I never get so far before I ask for help. And it's just a little reminder, but they pass those out at the Rita Walk. They pass all those things out, and it's a good idea to put them on a wall somewhere in your bathroom as resources.
Thank you for that, because usually we ask about a tool, so that was perfect. That was awesome.
And she also has a list of phone numbers and contacts, who to
that.
call first, especially if she can't get to me first, so having that plan in place. Really.
Well, actually, that's what I was just about to ask you. Rita, do you have an individual service plan and a safety plan already, like where it's already set?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a list of about 5 or 6 friends. If I
That's
can't
great.
get hold of Dave.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
That is such that's a big community, boy.
They all know my situation. And if I get to the bottom of the list and I don't get anybody, then I start over at the top again.
Or we call 911.
Yeah.
Was it 888 now? I want to say
988. Yeah. 988. Yeah. 988 will definitely get you to who you need to get to now.
That's a huge sign of strength that if you do make it through the list, to actually start over again. That's a great idea, but it's also like a huge show of strength. Like, because if you think about it, if you have 5 people and you kind of like, I can see myself doing it. Like I'm on the 3rd, the 4th, 5th, and I'm like thinking, oh geez, nobody cares. And like, I'm like pushing myself down further, but I got to commend you on that, to like start over. That's a great idea, to just start the list over.
I've never
real, that's
had
awesome.
to use it to
Thankfully.
a degree, I've never had to go through all 5, but I would see myself like you thinking, oh, nobody cares. What am I going to do? But it does work. Or he'll come home.
Yeah.
I've
come home just because we've had conversations on the phone, and there's a handful of times I just left work, and I am thankful that I have that ability that.
Oh, your son came over.
Yeah, my son came over once, but I'm thankful that I know, what I mean? I just know. And I think this goes back to the very beginnings of our relationship, getting to know each other and having that intimacy, that I can tell by the tone of her voice. I have to leave now. I have to go home and be with her. She can't sit in the darkness alone this afternoon. And she doesn't even have to ask me for that. I can just, it's one of those gifts that is huge when you know somebody really, really well. So.
It's also huge for you to take on that role and come home and do that. This is great. Like, that's what it takes, to be in this type of relationship,
It's great, but you know what? And I'm sure you guys probably wanted to go there at some point. This is not an easy lifestyle, man. And you guys
by no means did I.
Oh, we live this stuff every day, 24/7. It's like, no, it's not. I just want to commend you on that ability to develop that level of intimacy. And because this is your second marriage for both of you, do you think that was the impetus for that level of planning it on both of your sides? Because obviously with Rita, your experience being different, like I can understand, like there's a different level of alarm and different things that play into your way. I would have to imagine play into your way of thinking when it comes to meeting somebody new.
Being our second marriage and being the fact that neither of them were very good. Luckily, I had no children in my first marriage. So it was very easy for me. It wasn't easy, but it made it that much, I will say, easier to get up and leave because I didn't have children. And thankfully, I've never seen my ex since the day I left.
So that's good.
in all these years. Dave, however,
Yes.
has 2 grown children, and we are faced with that on a regular basis,
Yeah.
which is difficult,
at times. Yeah.
but we've adjusted.
We now have 4 grandchildren too. The newest one born just a couple weeks ago. So there's, there's
Oh,
good.
congratulations.
Thank you. Rita's kind of had that opportunity to have some babies in our life here, so it's definitely unique and cool all at the same time.
I got a question actually for both of you. Obviously, you're going to both have different answers, but for Rita, is there anything, whether it be advice or anything that you would like to say to someone living with mental illness that, basically you're saying something to the partner of that person? Is there anything that you could, like, advice or, maybe a tip that you could relay to that person? And then
To the
Dave,
partner or the person?
yeah, the partner. So, and then Dave, the same thing coming from the other angle, is there anything you could offer up?
Yeah, I would, on both ends, for the person with the depression as well as the partner, you need to be patient. You need to, dissect in a way what's going on with the person that has depression and try and understand as much as you can. I mean, he's gone to doctor's appointments with me and he's tried to understand the medications, the hospitals, he's really gotten involved to where we both understand what's going on. If I change a medication, we look it up, and we think, well, is this going to work or not? And, but for the spouse, a lot of times they say, I didn't sign up for this. But really, if you think about the vows that you said on your wedding day, it's for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do you part. And it's that illness that you did sign up for, but you have to be patient. Patience is the biggest thing.
It's funny because she basically hit on all the things that when you asked those questions, the stuff that was going through my mind, she would say, especially early on in that, especially that 5-year battle and some of the stories that I tell before that in the book, she would constantly tell me, you didn't sign up for this. I'm sorry, you didn't sign up for this. I'm like, no, I did sign up for this. This is my responsibility, right? And having, I think, both the sufferer and the spouse, right, has to have that. You have to be able to be responsible to and for one another. You have to be honest, right? This is so difficult to live through, in my opinion, that it breaks my heart that she suffers from this, and there's days that I have to just step back and just listen, so for the spouse of the person that's suffering, you need to listen. You need to, sometimes they just, and I already said it, but sometimes people just need someone to sit in the darkness with them. They don't need your solution to the, right? They don't need your solution to the problem. They don't need me. She doesn't need me telling her, hey, be anxious for nothing. She doesn't need to be me beating her with Bible verses, right? Or any other thing like that, whether because that doesn't help, right? What helps is being there, being educated and understanding this illness, understanding this is an illness. This is no different than cancer, it's not. Maybe it's a different type of illness, but it's still an illness, and we need to understand, as the spouse of the sufferer, I need to understand, what is this? Why is it, what the depth of this, right? The medications, the psychotherapy. We have engaged in years learning together about that, and I think that's the lifesaver, for us. I really do. It's together,
That's
answer.
awesome. That's awesome.
You're a good team.
You are a
We
good
do
team.
okay. We do okay together. We're not perfect. I got to say that again, man. I drive her
Hey,
crazy some days.
Like you said, we're human, and I think
Amen.
that's that's something that sometimes we lose focus on, is that we're human. Like, yeah, I get mad, and that's fine. We have emotions for a reason, and the reason is to feel them. What becomes a problem is if you react poorly to these emotions and do something that, but it's okay to feel them and communicate them. Hey, I'm feeling this way because of this, and talk it out. But we're human. No one's going to be perfect. No one's going to do the right thing all the time. It's more about accepting that and understanding that.
Absolutely.
David, thank you. And Rita, thank you so much for being on the show this morning and sharing your story and making the world a better place by sharing the story and spreading. But before we get into the closing part of this, where can we find Through the Lens of a Spouse and your new book? You said you had a new book coming out.
Yeah, it actually came out in June. Through the Lens of a Spouse 2, The Other Side of the Valley is the second one. They're both available on Amazon in paperback form and in ebook Kindle form.
Okay.
And they also can find them at the Living Word Parable Store in Latham.
Okay.
Rich over there has been very supportive in carrying both books for quite a long period of time now, So yeah, they can be found there too. If you want to support local business, that's even better. And somebody could always reach out to me, find me on Facebook. I'm not too hard to find.
On the website.
And we have 2 pages right now on Facebook, not websites. I am working on a website, but 2 pages. David Rita McCormick, Through the Lens of a Spouse, that somebody could contact us through that one. And then I have one that we started for Silently Suffering Ministries, where we could be contacted through that one. So all they have to do is send me, I have plenty of copies too. So send me an email, whatever, and, we'll hook up. So the more people that we reach, the better we all are, right? Yeah, God's good. You know what? We got a big challenge in front of all of us here, man.
For sure. So thank you for your part, though, in doing your share and being a help and a service. Because you guys together and your books, like I said, could be that resource on somebody's wall, and that's what we need. We need as many of these supports as possible, because the reality is some people don't have a lot of support and resources. So to make these resources available to everybody is something that, we like to help provide.
And then those 2 books really are just, they're both memoirs. They're really our stories, some's fun, some's not fun, some's dark. But it's a story of hope. That's what I really, want people to know. That's what this is about, hope.
Sounds like something Will would say. So we usually wrap it up with 3 questions, so you guys can both answer this little bit of a lighthearted one. Do you have a favorite or a least favorite word?
Hope is my favorite word.
I would say the same thing. Least favorite.
I got a little note here that I wrote down about that least favorite one. Least favorite is do not. I know it's more, and actually there's another word coming. And I know you said one word, but do not be anxious. I kind of cringe when I hear somebody tell Rita that. Hey, don't be anxious. You know what? You can suck it up. You can get through this. It's okay. It's like, no, you don't understand. You don't tell an anxious person to not be anxious, right? So that would be
you don't tell somebody with asthma to just breathe, right?
No. No. Amen. Good stuff.
Do you have a least favorite, Rita?
Probably just someone, oh, I know. Someone saying to me, well, I know what you're going through, when in actuality, they have no idea.
No matter how dark your walk is, you can't put yourself into somebody else's, right? I like to say, I can't put my illness into somebody else's box, right? My illness, right? My anxiety isn't the same shape, right, and size of hers, and that's what I think we tend to do.
I know your goal is to start a ministry. and stuff. But what else for a couple who has worked so hard on intimacy? Like, what is on your bucket list? Because we've had a pretty heavy conversation. Obviously, you've had both some pretty heavy lives. And and with the amount of light and hope that you bring in and try to keep generating, there's got to be something good on those bucket lists that are not mental health, church, like any, just living life, man. So what is on the bucket list?
We originally had hoped to move to Maine, believe it or not. Everybody we know want to move to Florida or to Carolinas where it's warmer, but we actually love the ocean. We love Maine. The cold weather doesn't bother us at all, right? The ocean, I'm in it. No matter what time of year, I'll be walking through it, So that was kind of on our bucket list,
And one of the other things is that when I met Dave, I was used to going on a vacation every year, at least for a week or a long weekend. And that's something that we've made sure we do just to get away and be with each other. And then as well as what you're probably more familiar with is having some date nights.
Amen.
To just get away from, well, we don't have kids in the house, but just to get away and spend your time with each other.
Yeah, to keep it
But
alive. Yeah.
Right. But that's good. I mean,
That is good.
I'm not actually surprised by that because the level of the beginning of it, that is actually a really textbook way of setting a good foundation. The way you did it. I'm not suggesting it for everybody, but I'm saying, like, for you, that was like there was probably no other way to do it but that way in order to make it work.
Yeah, it's so important and not everybody can do what we can do. I have a good job and we're very blessed. Not everybody can do what we do, but you don't have to go travel the world. You just need some time away, and there's a lot of things locally you can do too. Yeah, walk your dog in the park. We'll go to, there's a little park down here where we live in Kins Road. It's just like a little path through the woods, a few miles, and we'll take the dog over there and we'll walk. That goes back to that intimacy part, just getting away from everything else that goes on. And we do love to travel. We 3-4 times a year we try to sneak away somewhere, and like Rita said, even if it's just for a couple of days. We're planning on going to Maine for a couple of days as we celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary coming up. So, and it's going to be cold, but it's okay.
Yeah, right.
So the last question is, if there was something that you would like to see done or that you could do for mental health as a whole without any kind of restraint, what would it be?
The biggest thing is helping to stop the stigma, to me, and I don't know whether we ever will. I hope we do, I don't know, because the stigma, they're lies, right? They're lies. And the stigma holds people back from really sharing who they are. Rita made a really, really good point about and this has been one of our focal points every time we've talked anywhere. Rita wants people to know she's no different than them. But you say the word mental health illness, right, or mental illness or depression, and people look at you differently. I think we've made great strides in this area the last 3 years, right? But we need to continue, and I think that would be because and especially in the crazy world we're living in, this world's broken. It's really not too hard to figure that out if you watch, right? So we're probably not going to put an end to the illness itself, but we can embrace the illness, right? And make those help stop suicide is the ultimate goal by breaking that stigma, because too many people every day are still losing their lives over this.
And I would say that if I could do anything, it would be to have more podcasts like yours, to have more interviews like on the local news. I know they've done a little bit more with the pandemic, but have more groups that have Rita walks, or just to spread some of this stuff so that it infiltrates into the local communities so that people aren't as afraid to open up. and have more services in the inner cities specifically for places for people to go when they're in crisis.
Excellent. Agree fully. And we had just started to help facilitate mental health meetups at the Sages Circle in Glenville. So it's pretty local, and it's a great shop, great people. They offer lots of different things from Reiki to yoga to you name it. And they have a sanctuary in the back where, you can just go in there if you want to pray or just meditate or whatever, it's a great place.
Thank you very much, both of you, for being on.
Thank you. Yeah.
An absolute pleasure meeting you both.
Yeah. Thank you guys for doing what you do. You know what? Together, I mean, this is what this is about. Together, we can fight this thing, man.
Yeah, and bringing different people together with different ideas, man, from different backgrounds. It's still being able to listen, being able to listen to one another and have a conversation and not get caught up in, well, that's your thing and not mine. Like just that whole thing.
Hopefully learn from one another and see what best suits people and what we can each do individually to stomp out stigma,
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Timmy, you're
Thank you
welcome.
both.
Thank you both.
Guys. Have a great day.
You also, man. Thank you very much. Timmy, another great conversation, man.
Get well.
Be safe.
Stay
above.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Checking in at the end with you. I hope you enjoyed that episode with David and Rita McCormick. What a wonderful story of intimacy and rebuilding lives together after sustaining such trauma in their own relationships prior to meeting one another. The reason why I'm checking in with you at the end is because got something to tell you that Above Ground Podcast is involved in. Above Ground Podcast will be at the Noteworthy Center grand opening on Saturday, April 29th. That's right, this Saturday from 12 to 7 p.m. at 930 Broadway in Albany, New York. That's 12207 for you zip code people. Tatiana, who appeared on episode, I believe it was 105. Tatiana runs Noteworthy Resources, which is an incredible nonprofit here in the Albany area, here in Nippertown. And she is very involved in the skate community, and she has opened a skate park at 930 Broadway. And come celebrate Albany's newest community center and only indoor skate park for all ages. It's free to attend. It's $15 to skate. And you can go to NWR_Albany or at Indoor Skate Park. And nwralbany.org is their website. Again, a wonderful organization. Tatiana, an amazing person. We'll have to get her back on to hear all about how this all came about and hear the journey. Go back to episode 105 and find her. Again, until next week, get well, be safe, and stay above.
Thank you for giving us a listen. New episodes every Wednesday. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can share, rate, review, and even subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Other ways to support the show: follow us on social media, share the content, share our episodes. You can also buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/abovegroundpod. For further concerns, show ideas, or just to say hi, you can email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for listening and supporting mental health. Keep the conversation going and stay above.